Ever stop to think about what you're really made of? Well, in this explainer, we're going to open up the cell's toolkit and take a look at the fundamental chemical parts that build, power, and balance literally every living thing. Okay, so let's start with a big picture here. A cell is mostly water, about 70% as you can see, but the real magic, the stuff that makes life happen, it's all in that other 30%. That's the complex chemical mix we're going to dive into today. So, this question, what are we really made of? It's not just some philosophical thing. The answer starts right here inside a single cell. Understanding these basic building blocks is absolutely fundamental to understanding your own health, how diseases work, and how your body functions at the most basic level. All right, so before you can build anything, you've got to establish the right environment. And for a cell, that environment is all about water and maintaining an incredibly delicate chemical balance. It's easy to think of water as just filler, but it's actually the stage where all the chemistry of life happens. Because it's a polar molecule with a slight positive and negative end, it's an amazing solvent dissolving all the salts and sugars a cell needs. And, crucially, water itself can split, or ionize, into hydrogen and hydroxide ions. And that ionization, that splitting of water, leads us directly to one of the most critical concepts in all of biology, pH. Really, pH is just a straightforward measure of how many of those hydrogen ions are floating around. But that one number, it dictates everything, which chemical reactions can happen, how proteins fold, whether a cell even survives. And this table, wow, it just shows you how ridiculously specific and controlled this all is. Just look at the range. Your stomach acid is incredibly acidic, which is perfect for digesting food. But then look at your blood. It's kept in this insanely narrow, slightly alkaline window. A tiny shift there isn't just a small problem, it's a full-blown medical emergency. We're talking about acidosis or alkalosis, conditions that can throw your entire body's chemistry into chaos. Okay, so we've got our environment set. Now let's open up the toolkit and pull out our first major player, carbohydrates. You can think of these as the cell's go-to quick-burning fuel source. And you might think carbs equals energy. And you're right, but that's not the whole story, not by a long shot. They're also used for energy storage, as actual structural components, and they even play a huge role on the outside of cells, helping them recognize and stick to each other. The key thing to remember here is that all of these complex, huge carbohydrates are built from these tiny, simple units called monosaccharides. And the most famous of these, of course, is glucose, the primary fuel for your brain and your muscles. And this is a fantastic visual for that. On the left, you've got a single glucose molecule. Think of it like one Lego brick. And on the right, that's glycogen, which is our body's main energy reserve. It's just thousands of those glucose Lego bricks snapped together into this big branch structure that's perfect for quickly breaking off a piece for energy when you need it. So, what happens when a cell needs energy that's going to last, or when it needs some serious heavy-duty building material? Well, for that, it turns to our next tool in the kit, lipids. Lipids are basically the masters of efficiency. They pack a ton of energy for long-term storage, they form the basic structure of every single cell membrane, and they even act as crucial signaling molecules, like steroid hormones, that travel through your body carrying messages. And the most common storage lipid is a triacylglycerol. And hey, the name pretty much tells you the whole story. You've got one glycerol head molecule, and attached to it are 3 long tails made of fatty acids. This is exactly how fat gets stored in our adipose tissue. Okay, so let's put these two side by side. On the left, you see that simple, compact glucose ring we talked about. It's pretty straightforward. And on the right, whoa, look at that phospholipid. It's a completely different beast, right? It's much bigger, way more complex, and it has this distinct head that loves water and these long tails that hate water.
And this dual personality, this amphipathic nature, that's the absolute secret to how cells even exist. When you toss these molecules into water, they just spontaneously organize themselves into this bilayer. The water-loving heads face out towards the water, and the water-fearing tails tuck themselves away in the middle. And just like that, you have a stable barrier. You have a membrane.
So how does the body actually tap into all this dense fuel? It's this really cool multi-step process. First, lipolysis breaks down the stored fats and releases fatty acids. Then, those fatty acids get shipped to the cell's power plants, the mitochondria. And finally, a process called beta oxidation chops them up into these neat little 2-carbon units called acetyl-CoA, which are then fed right into the Krebs cycle, the cell's main energy furnace.
And the payoff? It's just staggering. The breakdown of a single molecule of one common fatty acid gives you over 100 molecules of ATP. That's the cell's actual spendable energy cache. It's way, way more energy than you get from a single molecule of glucose.
All right, let's take a breath and pull back for a second. We've looked at the stage, the quick burn fuel, and the long-term storage fuel. Now let's see how it all fits together in this finely tuned machine.
So what we have are two beautifully different but complementary strategies for energy. On one side, you have carbohydrates. They're soluble, they're easy to access, perfect for a quick burst of energy. And on the other, you have lipids. They're dense, they don't dissolve in water, and they're perfect for long-term storage and building strong structures. Its form perfectly following function.
So, if there's one thing you walk away with, it should be this. A cell is not just a random soup of chemicals. It is an incredibly, breathtakingly complex machine. The pH of its water, the quick fuel from its carbs, the dense energy from its lipids, it all has to work in perfect, delicate balance.
So we've got the fuel, we've got the walls. But that just begs the next big question, doesn't it? If carbs and lipids are the energy and the structure, what about the engines? What about the workers that are actually running the whole factory, carrying out all the jobs? Well, that's a great story for our next explainer.